Okay, so we're going to get started with exercise 225. And again, like I said last class, you should be really finishing up the bulk of the modeling because we'll move next week into creating drawings like sections and elevations and that sort of thing. Sectional renderings, all the really sexy stuff out of it. Not that the renderings themselves aren't, but it starts to get really fun when you cut a big section through and you have a rendering and whatever. So I finished last class. This was the end of my my final rendering that I spit out of my nighttime interior view. So we've got nice dark outside. We've got the light showing. Everything appears to be working rather nicely. And now it's time to take the step to go outside. And so I went from an exterior day rendering into an interior day rendering. And then I went into an interior night rendering because we had just done the lights. And now it's time to go back outside to do the exterior nighttime rendering. So the good news is, because I've already loaded all my night settings that I did last class, it's just a matter of switching the camera angle to be outside. That by itself, unfortunately, isn't quite enough. So even though I can switch to be outside and start this rendering process from the outside, I need to make sure that a few things are set up correctly to really allow it to look good outside. And so the first thing is that if I have any kind of glass that isn't the very, very basic glass, I'm not going to get any light that really spills out because too much of it will be reflected. So I want to make sure that any of the glass that's in my buildings or whatever is actually the basic glass. And I believe that it all is, but I'm going to take a quick look and make sure that it is. And let me just take a quick look here. There. And even though I can't make adjustments here, yeah, basic glass, basic glass, basic glass, they're all basic glass. So I don't really have to worry about it. But if you use something else, you want to make sure that you go back to your original block, edit it, change the material to be just a very basic glass. We still may need to do some adjustments to get a little bit more light spilling out of the windows, and I'll show you how we can go about doing that should we need to do it. So I also have to set up what is the view that I want to be looking at from this exterior. I could use the same view that I set up originally. So if I went to set view, and if I went to my, I don't remember which one it was, this one, I could use this view. It's essentially the same as what I had before. And if I were to render it, let me go to my options and change my size down here so we can get the quick preview. We should get a reasonable output. So bear with me for just, I should have turned off the distributed rendering. Hold on a second. I have to wait for it to pop up. All right, you got them for today. Essentially, you already have it. So just work on the model. All right, so I went ahead and turned off that distributed rendering so that it wouldn't lock things up. I'm also going to turn off all of these little bunch grass pieces that I put in, just so that they don't end up conflicting too much with my overall scene. And it looks like I accidentally put them all on the sun layer. So let me move them onto their own layer. And then I can turn them off. I'll end up turning those back on for the final render, but I don't want it to take too much time when we do the little test renders here. And again, I turned off distributed rendering because this is such a small view. So as this is finishing up, I can tell that I'm getting decent light coming out of my windows, which is obviously part of it. On the screen up here, the background looks black enough. On my screen, it's not black enough, so I'm going to need to make that correction. But I'm also checking to see that the light is spilling from the windows out onto the patios down here and over here, which again is harder for you to see on the projector than it is for me to see it on there. So I feel reasonably confident in the position of the lights here, but I'd like to light up parts of the outside of the building as well. So I'm going to spend a little bit of time and work to create some exterior lights to help illuminate the building. And maybe this ends up being a little bit too flashy. If it were actually out in this location, maybe I wouldn't want to spotlight up the building. But for the sake of the rendering, I think it's a reasonable thing to do. So I'm going to go ahead and work to add a few more lights. I'm going to add some lights that tuck right underneath this little rail. So I'll use a rectangular light right here. And again, rectangular lights are always based on the overall size in terms of the wattage. So it's going to be a bit of a guess as to what's appropriate. So let me snap to that. And remember that that rectangular light needs to be down ever so slightly from its, so it's not coplanar here. So let me look in the side view, and we'll drop it down just a little bit. Like that. And then we'll go into our properties, our light properties here. I want to change the color, 255, 214, 170. Say OK. We want it to be in watts, and I'm going to go at about 60. I'm going to make it invisible, and all of that seems good. I'll do the same thing for this edge over here. So another little light that goes there. So once again, it'll be a rectangular light, and we'll go maybe from there. There. To about there. So now I have that little rectangular light. Notice that this one, the arrow is pointing the wrong way, so I'm going to type flip to get it to go the opposite way. Okay. So now that it's going the other way, we'll change the color, 255, 214, 170. And we'll change this to watts. We'll change this to maybe, this one's smaller, so I'm going to leave it at maybe 30. I'll make sure that it's invisible. And so now I have that one established as well. So I got those two little pieces. Maybe I want to create some spotlights that are out in the ground shining up toward my building. I could do that as well. So let's create a spotlight. It's hard to necessarily pick exactly where it's going to go. So before I do the spotlight, I'm gonna get kind of a general line of a target that's pointed out here in space somewhere. So let me turn off ortho. It actually might be easier to do this in top view. So if I had a line, maybe from right about there, oops. Maybe one more. And I can take those lines and I can project them down onto the surface to get where I can set my base point and kind of the general trajectory of the lines. Does that make sense? So I'm just giving myself a little bit of a guide for where I want these to exist such that I can point them up at my building. So I'll go ahead and create the spotlight down here. On that point, we'll say a little bit finer. Let's do maybe 4 feet, and then we'll do in this direction. Oh, come on! Turn on ortho here. By maybe 1 foot. No, let's do it like at 8 feet, something like that. So I have my little spotlight. Let's move this so that my point is right there. And let's adjust this. We already know that it's pointing roughly along that line, but I need to rotate it up so it's pointing at the building. Let me switch into one of my side views. I have my front, my top. Let me look at my right side. And let's go into wireframe here. All right, so we need this pointing up toward the building. So we'll rotate from there, and we'll go, let me turn off ortho here. We want it to be pointing up toward the building. Let me kind of generally control where it's going to go, about like that, as my angle. Then we'll adjust the color. So 255, 214, 170. And this is going to be in watts, but I'm going to beef this up a fair amount. We'll go to maybe 150 on an inverse square. And then before I go to create the other lights, I want to do a test and see if it's even working, or whether the size of my light works, or whether I need it to be a little bit more narrow. So I'll set up a little bit of a view here, and then we'll do a quick render. And again, my render is set to be really small, so I can just see, is it working? Am I actually lighting up my building or not? So we can see that the lights that I put in underneath that little bit of coping, those are lighting up reasonably well. If I wanted them to be a little bit more powerful, but they're lighting the ground a little bit, so that's okay. But it looks like my spotlight is nowhere near enough, or it's not working at all. Let's make sure that it's above the surface, which I may not have had it. Let's go up just a tiny bit here. There, and let's try it one more time. All right, so we're getting a little bit here, but it's nowhere near strong enough. So let's go at like 1,000 and see if that makes a difference, or whether it's just the curvature is blocking it. So this is one of those things where it's a happy medium of things as to whether we're getting what we want. I think I'm blocking too much of it from the curvature. So I'm just going to go ahead and move that vertically. Something like that. And let's have a look and see. So it had to do with its position on the building wasn't quite high enough. So now that it seems reasonable, it seems like I'm getting decent quality light there. I can take that one light, and we'll go ahead and copy it in place, and then I'm going to look at it in the top view, and I'm going to rotate it. Again, it's roughly the same angle this time, but I want to go from here so that I've got one that's going over in that direction, which is what I wanted. I'll copy it in place again, and then I'll rotate that one. And we'll go from here over to there this time. So I have those three lights that are going to be working together to kind of light up this building. Okay. The other thing that adds to the realism a little bit, and if it's a night scene, we don't have to concentrate too much on this, but where I choose to place a little bit of grass can make a big difference. So if I were to place, for example, a little bit of that bunch grass right down here in front of the lights, right, that would cast some shadows on the building and make it a little bit more realistic. So beyond just doing this view, right, and confirming that my render works and I'm getting good lighting on that side of the building, I may drop in a little bit of grass in front of these lights just to add a little bit of shadow as that casts against the overall building. So I want to make sure that this isn't too bright. Those are probably, now that there's three of them, probably too bright. So let's go ahead and take those three down. And maybe we'll do 300 at piece. And then let's take those three, and I'm going to copy them to the other edge of the building here. So we have those. We copy. And we'll take them around the corner to maybe over in here somewhere. And then we'll rotate, oops. Take those, rotate, 90, oops, 180, went the wrong direction. So there, those are sitting over here now. Okay, they probably need to go up a bit too. So that they're above the ground a little bit. And then I have to kind of look at them in the side view and make sure that they're not too high. They look a little bit high, so let me rotate them in the side view. We'll tip them down just a little bit like that. So now I have the lights on both sides of the building. We'll have another look and see if they're working. All right, so that seems to be working fairly well. I'm getting the spread that I want, the spotlights that I want to be able to illuminate that side of the building. And again, it's a matter of taste as to whether you like it or you don't like it. Now let me go ahead and I'm going to turn that bunch grass back on. And I'm going to take one of them and I'm going to copy it down by where the lights would go. Stick it like that. And let me move it around a little bit. Let's move. And sometimes you really end up having to work in multiple views as you start to do this. Let's copy a few of these. Like that. Let me take all of them. I'm going to move them vertically so that we hope that they'll intersect a little bit of the lights as we shine through. You kind of see how I'm doing that? And then we'll do another test render and see if we get a little bit of the shadowing that I'm after as the grass would be growing through. It looks like it's missing some of the material. So this may take a little bit of more finesse on my end because the proxy object didn't load correctly. So I'm going to have to fix that before this is going to show. You can see these little bumps there should have been the grass texture, but it's not pulling those through. So I'm going to have to bring those in again. I'll show you the end result afterward, but I can tell that it's not working because I'm getting the rounded arcs rather than the little grass. So anyway, I'll come back and I'll deal with that a little bit later. So after I get all of these pieces put together and I add the lights the way that I want and I'm happy with what it's looking like, then it's just a matter of setting up my exterior view and getting a good quality render. If the end result of the render is too light outside, we have a couple different options that we can change in V-Ray. The first thing is under Environment. Let's make sure that the GI or skylight goes down. Right? So we can go to maybe 0.5. And here under the reflection or the background, let's take that way down to maybe like 0.1. We're really darkening everything. And if those two don't do enough, we can also adjust the camera exposure. I'm still at 100. I could maybe go to 200, and that would darken the whole scene a little bit more. So now that that's set up, okay, let me back up. Let's take this view. Let me render it again, and let's see what happens. It's definitely darker. which is what I want. I still may have to go down a little bit more because I'm still seeing a little bit more of the background than I'd like, but it's definitely much better. So the other thing that could happen is maybe we want to take a view that's a little bit closer in, and we might want to add some extra little light fixtures. And you guys have been working on your exterior light fixtures. Maybe I want little subtle light fixtures as part of each of these little posts. I could do a little rectangular light. So really what you're choosing to show is a matter of what works for you. The point is that it needs to be exterior, and we need to start showing little bits of what the exterior looks like. If you're having trouble and you're not getting enough light coming out of the windows, it's a twofold problem. One, you just don't have enough lights inside to cause enough. Two, you have to make sure that you have some kind of a surface for the light to cast onto. So in the case of right here, if I was doing a rendering, I'd have the light spilling out onto this surface because I have a patio that's adjacent to where the window is. Right? If I didn't have a surface, or if that surface is too far away, I'm not going to see the light being cast out. Okay? So hopefully you're at the point where you're feeling like you're starting to have a lot of these pieces together and you can set up this exterior rendering. If not, it's really time to get caught up and be ready for that. And I should start seeing good quality renderings coming out as you move forward. Next week on Monday, we're going to start by taking a sectional rendering view. So we'll take this, we'll cut a section through it, and then we'll do a rendering where you can see what's happening inside the building. And then we'll move into drawings from there. Okay? So the more done it is, the better you're going to be. I promise. Are there any questions? No? All right. Within a set of glass?
Yeah, within a set of glass.
I don't know. We'd have to try it. I'm not sure. I don't know what I guess I should say, yes, you can do it, but I don't know what the end result would be.